Sorry, so you asked me about crazy. But my crazy is exactly why I'm sitting with you guys. Capitalism is not inherently bad. The private sector also understands that if we let the country fall, we will fall with it. The brand went through a massive crisis in 2019, and I think that was the best thing that happened to that business. That it required 3 women in the boardroom for a woman's voice to be heard. 51% of our population are women. We are a poorer country. We cannot have 51% of our population not participating
in the workforce.
I think that is just simple. I had a very traumatic upbringing. A lot of violence, instability. Being a single dad, especially a single dad in a country like ours, is very difficult.
Kaushali, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks so much.
It's amazing to have you here. So, you've had a phenomenal career, I would say. You've been the former country director and managing director of Coca-Cola Sri Lanka. You've been the marketing director of Hemas International, and also Atlas.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. So, what do you do now, and where did it all start?
So what I do now is I'm in corporate training as well as I do coaching for women.
Okay.
And I also am a part of a startup by the name of Jack for Jungle that's very passionate about taking Sri Lankan food and beverages into the world. And our spin, though, is we want to be able to tell the story of Sri Lanka because we find that very meaningful, whether it's telling the story of our culture or history, which hasn't been done as much. We find that to be very meaningful to pair ingredients and cuisine with who we are as a people of a 3,000 plus year history. So that's what I do now. And where did it start? I guess it started 17 years ago as a young kid out of university with zero clue as to where life was going to take her. I started in consulting, found that to be not my cup of tea. And then I got into advertising with Leo Burnett. But once I got into advertising, I knew that I had to find my way into marketing because I didn't want to be on the end at the final leg of execution. I wanted to be with the people who were deciding what goes into the market and why they were doing what they were doing. So I was in advertising all for like a year while it was really fun. And then I got into marketing, and my first marketing job was with Hemas. And since then, I've been with a mix of companies that are both multinationals as well as local companies. And I've had a really great time, And I think whatever experiences I got in those 16 years is what is going to take me far in this phase of my life.
Okay, so when you were at Leo Burnett, were you in digital marketing? What kind of marketing were you really in at that point?
Inosh, when I was in marketing, digital marketing
wasn't a thing. Okay, fine. But primarily, what kind of marketing are you really kind of specialized in?
So I think I'm a marketing journalist.
Right.
And why do I say that? Essentially, again, going back to 17, 16 years ago, marketing was still within the ATL sphere, right? So the mass media kind of segment. But I would say, what am I really good at? I think what I'm really good at is I'm very good at understanding consumer sentiments. I'm able to understand a need, and I'm able to understand emotively what that means in terms of a business strategy. And then what I'm also good at is to really understand the trends in the world in terms of whether it's in digital, or maybe it's in data, or maybe it's in sort of retail, and to be able to pair the consumer sentiment and the real need with a business strategy. What I'm also good at, I've found, is that I'm able to bring in the right talent. And when I say the right talent, I'm also very clear that I think the right talent is not always the smartest and the best. It's about putting a team together that has the right chemistry.
Right.
So I think this is what makes me good at what I've been doing. And that's why I say I'm a marketing generalist. And simply because I can see how something can land rather than being a specialist in one particular area.
So, I mean, we're talking a little bit about social marketing. Well, could you, I don't know what that is. Well, could you maybe give us a little bit about an introduction to what social marketing is and how that fits into your marketing generalist kind of sphere?
Sure. So to me, and again, I'm going to tell you my interpretations of
Yeah, absolutely.
everything that's out there, right? To me, social marketing is really about understanding a specific purpose or a cause that is important in society at that point, and leveraging that cause to really bring business results. Now, I want to, when I say business results and I'm talking about a cause, it might sound a very capitalist kind of idea. And if that is so, I don't think people need to apologize. I'm going to start there, okay? Because capitalism is not inherently bad. Money is good for the system. We just want to make sure that it's not the segments in society are not tipped in towards a particular segment than the other. That's what it is.
Allocation.
Exactly.
Sure.
So social marketing is really, again, about a cause and how do you align your business values and support that cause. And when you're selecting a cause, it has to be genuine in the sense that the business, what they say they're doing, and how they're communicating on an everyday basis also needs to align with that social cause. When it doesn't align is when the thing you were talking about before.
CSR?
Yes, then the CSR concept comes about. Now, I would like to drive a distinction between CSR and social marketing.
So you wouldn't say it falls under that bracket?
I think it does fall under that bracket, but I think it's the mentality with which you approach it.
Right.
Okay, for example, like a CSR project, let's say a company is in consumer goods, and majority of the time, let's say they're talking about beauty and, the beauty standards or whatever it is, right? Now, a company that is sort of driving their products in that fashion, if they go tomorrow and build 10 wells, there is nothing wrong with it. It's great, right? If you needed 10 wells in a particular village or so, building that out because they identified that need is great. Okay? So to me, that's CSR. Because between what the company is doing and what they're talking about in every single day is not necessarily the kind of good that they're translating in terms of their CSR initiatives. Now, compare and contrast that. If they say, okay, and obviously we know the brand that we're talking about here when I start explaining this, because I do think, and I'm not going to name the brand. Let's say you're talking about beauty standards, but your cause becomes that you're going to challenge those beauty standards because it is affecting the standards of women's well-being and self-esteem. And then you start driving causes and projects for the greater good of, women's mental well-being. To me, that's social impact, and that's sustainable. It's good for business. It is good for society. So, and it becomes very sustainable. Why is it sustainable? Because there is a direct correlation between how a brand is communicating on an everyday basis and the projects you're doing in terms of social goodness. So there becomes a really good marriage between the marketing team, the sales team, even the CEO, to kind of keep these projects running. Whereas it's not going to be this ad hoc thing that you do because you need to, address a particular quota, or because your annual reports are coming through, or because you faced a crisis. So there's sustainability in that. So I think a lot of the times what I've seen happen is you go through a company's annual report and they're like, okay, I've done this, and tick mark, and tick mark, and tick mark. But it's not really meaningful even for the company and the employees. And it's not really resonating out there in society, because between what the company does or what brand does and the initiative, there is no major sync. So it becomes very forgettable as well. So to me, I think if a brand or a company is talking about a particular value set, do the things that are in line with your value set. It helps your image, and therefore that is why it's going to add back in terms of your revenue. And it's also going to come to support you at a time when you hit a crisis. And in today's day and age, brands and companies facing a crisis is commonplace. It's not rare. So it is good for, when I say sustainability, in preventing something bad from happening, or in your ability to recover faster.
Because you positioned yourself quite well early on.
Yeah, because you're already known for the good that you're doing. It's a consistent message. People understand it. People have an easy expectation of it. And your employees and your leadership are aligned to it because they're seeing the cohesion between the social good that you're doing and the business.
Have you found it very difficult in your experience working in multinational corporations that they did not want to align in that way? Because it could be very contradictory, yeah? A tech company, a social media company, might say they care about the mental health of their users, but their whole business model is based on everyone getting glued into it. So there's a contradiction, yeah? So how would you balance that out?
Sure. I mean, I think more often than not, I will first talk about companies that don't have a contradiction, and then we can get into companies that have a contradiction. So I think, she spoke about my experience even at Atlas.
Yeah.
And I think what was phenomenal in that example was, again, the brand went through a massive crisis in 2019, huge loss of market share. And I think that was the best thing that happened to that business. Primarily because, the leadership team had to come together to say, okay, what is our identity as of now? We're very functional. We are just about products. We're about setting a book. We're about setting a pencil. And all of these things are kind of standing alone. There's nothing that has heart in it. So when you took a step back, first was to say, okay, are we going to build a pretty brand? Or are we going to say, we are not just sending a book or a pencil, but we operate in the educational sphere. So first thing was to say, what is the business you're in? Okay, so you kind of move from the idea of being stationary to education. Now, if you move in and if you redefine your landscape as being education, the number of social issues that exist within that sphere becomes much clearer.
Right.
So the one that we chased after was to say there's a lot of anxiety, and I don't remember the stats anymore. There's a lot of anxiety that went hand in hand with education, especially in Southeast Asian countries like ours. There was a lot of depression, suicide also associated with education. our understanding of it was that, education, which is this sort of, you know, so the most fundamental thing that a child receives in their formative years, moving away from fun and easiness is the problem that we needed to solve for. And so the first thing was to say, our purpose, which ultimately was our tagline as well, was making learning fun. How did that translate into the social goodness? We said, okay, it's about democratizing education. It's about uplifting the quality of teaching, and it is also about infrastructure. What that meant is democratizing means a child has the right to education. But there's a certain percentage of Sri Lankan children that don't get access to education, not because the education system is not free, because they can't afford the school supplies. So what is our role and responsibility in ensuring that these children don't fall behind because they have what they need to get to the school? Second was to say, okay, there's a huge gap in terms of the quality of teaching. What are the initiatives we want to drive to enhance the quality of teaching? So is it train the trainer programs, getting much more awareness around early childhood development, bringing international concepts to teachers, partnering with both educators as well as government on delivering those programs. And the third is, of course, infrastructure. When you go into schools, you develop the kind of infrastructure that they require.
Right.
Now, why is that kind of model really good? Is when you're doing an ad campaign and you're talking about making learning fun, you can beautifully integrate also the work you're doing elsewhere.
Right.
Okay? And consumers understand that really well. Stakeholders, which includes, your government partners, understand that really well. The people who are meant to endorse your brand, which includes your teachers, understand it well. And ultimately, moms and kids really can engage with that kind of concept on a daily basis really well.
Right.
Okay. So to me, I think that was an example of a beautiful merging between what the company says it does and the values it stands for, and being very, very concise in terms of the communication model as well, right? Now, when you talk about brands that do have a conflict, I think it also comes from the point of view of how the brand or the company sees the business within which they operate, which is, again, the same thing that I was saying before. So let's take the example you were setting, which is, let's say we'll take a gaming company that says they want people to have better mental health. So now, let's assume that their leadership team is actually dedicated to that cause. Now, I think that's where it starts. If there is no authenticity in the leadership team, then you're right. It's just absolute failure, and it becomes very kind of obvious to both stakeholders as well as consumers. Now, let's say that leadership team is dedicated to that cause. We could also say that while the addiction to our screens have created a greater level of loneliness, isolation amongst the species, that's mental health is reliant on our social needs. This becomes the contradiction you spoke of. However, we can also say that through digital means, we've also been able to enhance education, get education out into rural towns, villages, and so on across the globe. And the more educated a society is, there's a greater upliftment of their lifestyles, right? So we can also argue it that way. We can also argue that when it comes to things like mental health, a lot more therapists and mental health advocates are also using digital mediums to allow you to have access to those services faster and at your convenience. And we can also agree that certain gamification methodologies can actually be utilized to sort of overcome things like anxiety or depression and so on and so forth, which is, and you do see a lot of apps in the market dedicated to that. Now, can you argue against those apps? Yes. As with everything in life, there are pros and cons to anything. But I think sort of investment in experts, investment behind the relationships with stakeholders, whether it's sort of mental health experts or maybe it's government stakeholders, maybe it's NGOs, or bringing those experts to the table, devising how you operate and the kind of products you put in there, that ultimately can result in social goodness.
Right.
Because what we can't change, we can't assume that the world is not going to move in a particular way, which is to say that, for example, in this particular example, we can't assume that digital is not going to play a role.
Yeah.
Of course.
Meaning the devil has to exist.
Yeah.
But while the devil exists, can we also have the tools, the frameworks to support or to negate any negative impact? Yes. And I think that's generally the way the world works, because we can also argue that, say, for example, when the world went into the industrial age, that it did more harm than good. But, the world today, more people have access to food and basic infrastructure than we've ever had before. So you can always argue that, something is bad. But the world has arguably gotten a place that it's better off. So that's my point of view.
And then it's based on what we do with it. is your point.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And your ability to authentically deliver social impact is your system's belief behind it. That's why I said even on the part of your leadership's ability to hold on to those values, communicate those values amongst employees, live up to those values, authentically within your corporate culture is very, very important, because that sets a very strong signals to even your employees about how they should innovate, how they should drive projects, right? So if there is a breakdown between what's written on a PPT and how the leadership is behaving, the kind of projects a leadership team is endorsing, and then that lack of cohesion is not going to send out a signal to your employees, to your middle management, to your senior management, in terms of the kind of projects that they can conceptualize and drive. So it's never going to even come to the table. So, it's not, when you talk about social impact, social marketing, whatever, it can never be this thing. It's not a project that you land on X day.
Yeah.
It has to be.
It has to be part of your identity.
It has to be part of your identity.
As someone, you were mentioning you're an expert in consumer behavior, right? So this is kind of part of trying to get everyone involved in the process. It's human psychology. If you feel involved, you're more dedicated to the business. And that's kind of the business angle that you're going for also, along with the charity angle.
Yeah, so I think number one is, I wouldn't even think of it as calling it as charity. I think, because if you think of charity is done when it's sometimes convenient and when the resources are available.
Sure.
But
Right.
if you think about it as a part of your DNA and as detrimental,
It's part of your strategy.
your strategy, it's a detrimental part of how you generate your revenue, so it's important for your P&L,
Okay.
then it becomes just how you exist, right? So that's number one. But secondly, if it becomes a core part of your P&L and how you deliver your product and your brand to market, it's gonna be quite silly if you don't communicate that to your employees. So it just has to be a part of how you exist. I'll give you an example. Right? Let's take an example of us as individuals. Okay. Now I'm not saying this example is right or wrong because there is a lot of people who are no longer religious, right? But let's say you are a practicing Christian. Okay. You don't wake up one day and you decide that you believe in God, and you really believe in God, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, today I think today God is not there. While we may have those thoughts, what I'm saying is your beliefs and your values just become how you operate, right? So that's a particular example. I'm not advocating for religion, and I'm not saying you cannot question religion, but I think it explains how our values, our beliefs are not things that you choose one day and you choose to disassociate with on the other day. It is just how you operate. It is how you operate with your kids, your family, your friends. It's how you operate within your work. It's just ever existing, right? So it's the same thing with social impact. There's nothing wrong with talking about social impact. If your company is doing something good, and if they're getting a benefit of doing something good, if you are a recipient of that goodness, good for you. If you allow the company to talk about it and it has a positive impact, they're just going to do more of it. So I think we need to allow for that space for companies to be recognized for doing good. It's just positive reinforcement.
Incentives at the end.
It is an absolute incentive. We want you to do good because you are earning revenue. You have the power, the resources to do good. But if society becomes inherently too skeptical that you can't do this or you can't do that, you must have the voice on this, but you cannot do that, you will not get anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So I no longer sit here in front of you guys being a part of corporate. I just genuinely believe that there is great impact that can be made for the benefit of society if we advocate for companies to do good and for them to also benefit from that good. Because I think there's a lot of good in the world that is still lacking. So, and just sort of this over-reliance on government to always fix for.
Right.
It hasn't gotten any country very, very far. So it takes everybody. It's like that whole, I'm going to butcher this now, but that whole quote from Kennedy, ask not what you can, what your country can do for you, but also ask what you can
Do for your country.
So that is not just individual. It should be companies. It should be anyone and everyone involved.
That's a hard mentality to take, though, especially in companies here, I would say. Because, to say, okay, like, ask yourself what can you do for the company is hard when you're constantly, I personally believe in corporates especially, you do get exploited a lot in monetarily, in terms of how they treat you, especially in Sri Lanka. We're talking about Sri Lanka. How do you, since you brought up the quote, I'm bringing this up. How do you deal with that in that kind of scenario? I mean, you've been in the workforce for, 17 plus years in a leadership role. There's two questions to this. How do you deal with that, one thing? And what's it like being a woman in the workplace all those years? What has it been like for you? So 2 questions there, big questions. But before you answer, can we get the coffee?
Go Madhuranga.
This is, the hot one is, this is yours, Piccolo. This is yours.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Wait, we'll remove for you.
Wait.
I'll tell you, we did a segment last time and we bought coffee and they had these. It took a good 8 minutes to remove this.
It's all on video.
It's all on video. Yeah.
So we should name to a brand endorsement of hers.
That's what we're thinking. Should we reach out to them for a
I
sponsorship
think
of some
we
kind?
probably should.
Pretty sure.
I have a few complaints on their packaging and marketing.
No, but they need to do this because when they're traveling, even buying tends to fall, no?
Yeah.
Do you have any good ideas for that?
You know what? I think they're doing a very good job because they've been expanding at a rate.
At a rate.
Absolutely.
And their outlets are looking
Phenomenal.
very
Yeah.
good. Now, maybe the coffees. But, you know, at least that means coffee is within reach. And you know what?
That's true.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, then we have coffee.
Yes, we have coffee. Thank you very much.
There you go.
That's it all.
Right, thank you.
Shit.
You want me to open it for you?
Thank you. Are you, I mean, you get into this, but are you spiritual?
Yes.
You are? Okay. Interesting.
Not religious, spiritual.
Yes. Because I go to the Korean, I go to the temple, I go to the church.
Interesting.
Really
Okay.
interesting.
Hey, any God that can help me? I'm
Why not?
not going to deny it.
Okay, you can start.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead. I'll just-
Yeah, so do you remember the question I asked?
I do.
Okay.
And let me
Let's recap.
Reframe your question.
Sure.
Say what you were saying is there's a lot of exploitation that happens
Yeah.
within.
Corporates in Sri Lanka in general.
Yep. And how they reconcile that, having been in a relationship, is that your question, or how have I dealt with it?
The first question is how have you dealt with it? And how does it tie into that quote you brought up about like, okay, this should apply to corporates as well, about like, okay, what can you do for your country or for your company?
Sure.
How do you deal with that in a workplace where you're constantly being belittled or, you know, just exploited in general? How would you deal with that?
Sure. So let me start with a more collective view of what can companies contribute to country. To be honest, I do think Sri Lankan companies do this a little bit better
Okay.
than in most other countries. And I'll give you a few examples, right? If you look at the floods that we had recently, the number of companies that participated, donated money, came together, I think is phenomenal. And I will compare and contrast that. Even if you take, and I don't want to name countries, but if you take the West, and you do have natural disasters that happen, you don't have that level of corporate involvement in recovery. Okay, so it's a compare and contrast. So I do think that we inherently do have companies, because also we operate from we cannot, like I said, whether it's religion or whatever it is, we cannot separate our culture from the work we do and the businesses
True.
we run. And we are a collectivist culture.
True.
Right? And we really saw that with floods this time. It's individuals who contributed in the cleaning efforts or donation drives and so on and so forth, right? We have a fantastic culture in that sense, right? So I first want to start by saying, Sri Lankan corporates are doing better
Than the West.
than in some other
general.
countries that
Sure.
I have seen,
Sure.
right? And if I was to take, again, this is not to say that corporate Sri Lanka somehow is God's gift to earth or something like that, right? This is just also to say that let's take a look at the last 6 years of our country. From 2019, 2020, 2022, 23 to now 2025, we've had misfortunes become our normal.
Right.
And what I also do want to point out is that if you take Sri Lanka, we have been very, very resilient. We have demonstrated greater resilience than most countries, even if you compare it to even a country like Greece. We've had a greater level of bounce back. So, what's contributing to our ability to bounce back? I think again it goes back to culture. We are not the most peaceful nation, but we are a resilient nation. And how does resilience translate into the business environment? Because we must admit that corporate Sri Lanka, private sector, pulled off quite a few miracles between 2019 crisis, COVID,
Right.
and also financial crisis. Because we saw a mass exodus of people. But we didn't see the kind of job losses that you would have seen even when, the 2008, 2009 financial crisis hit the West. We did not have that, right? Now, our circumstances were significantly different. And when we say different, we had a fuel crisis. We didn't have ways to get people into the offices.
Yeah.
We couldn't get access to raw material. So, businesses were resilient. Businesses were willing to form partnerships, connections that weren't traditional. So there was a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
That when I say innovation, I don't mean product innovation, but, when it comes to even how you think, how you operate, your ability to think on your feet. I think a lot of leaders demonstrated that in the private sector during the financial crisis. And I think we're seeing that again because now, again, like I said, we shouldn't be shy of earning money. Okay? Money is good. So if we're seeing that private sector is contributing even during the floods in terms of money and resources and so on and so forth, I say great. Now, I don't know the inner thinking of all of these companies, but one is, of course, like I said, it's culture, and we believe that, showing up, rocking up, and doing good is good, just good. But I also believe that the private sector also understands that if we let the country fall, we will fall with it. There is no country doing badly and we're doing good. There is no equation. These last 6 years have taught us that. I don't think we needed a crisis to teach us that. That almost seems quite intuitive. But we understand that the country has to do well for us to do well. I also want to think about projects like Cinnamon Life. Imagine raising $1 billion, right, in funding and having this kind of incredible vision.
Yeah.
By one of the largest conglomerates in this country, and being able to pull that through even during a financial crisis, it is again for the greater good of this country, right? So I do believe that companies understand that Sri Lanka doing well is good for business. So that is number one, is to say that, going back to the whole Kennedy quote, ask what you can do for your country. So I do think it's not that companies, at least Sri Lankan companies, are completely blind to what they can do for the country. We also want our consumers to do well. And this is my experience as well. If your consumers start buying less or fall below the poverty line, it is just bad for business.
Sure.
Yeah.
We want consumers to stay with us. I'll give you a very interesting stat. Again, when I was at Atlas, when the financial crisis hit, the book list at that time also was between like 7,500 to like 10,000 rupees. We realized that children, there was a likelihood based on some of the global crises that had happened, that about 50% of the kids could fall out of the education system, and if they did, the likelihood of them coming back was very low. Now imagine the generational impact that would have on the country and our economy and so on and so forth, right? So there was a huge initiative that we launched to raise funds to ensure that children stayed in school. Now, on one hand, we were doing the right thing for the country. Can you imagine in another 10 years if 1 out of 2 kids didn't have an education? Okay, what would that mean for our country? But was it good for business? Yes. It was very good for business. It was good for business for us to channel our money into doing a project to ensure that these children stayed in school. Because if 50% of the kids dropped out, we don't have business. So this is why I'm saying capitalism gets a bad rep. It's really about ensuring that money is channeled in the right way and there is no exploitation that happens. And I think, having a moral code within leadership is very important too. So to ensure that that sort of exploitation doesn't happen. But I think money is good. We need to, I think we shouldn't have such a complicated relationship with it. So that's one. But secondly, now does this mean, I've spoken so much about our culture and how it's great and good and da-da-da. Does that mean exploitation doesn't happen? No, it definitely happens. Do women face challenges in the workplace? Yes, they do. There are far more biases that a woman would face than a male counterpart. Yes. Are politics more nuanced in Sri Lanka? Yes, absolutely. What is the role and responsibility of companies, and what is the role and responsibility of individuals? I think that's also very important. So let's get into your question of exploitation.
Sure.
But I also want to maybe slightly deviate from the word exploitation. The reason I do this is not to discount that exploitation does or does not happen. It's simply because I also want to make sure that I speak from my experience.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I'll instead use the word challenges.
Okay.
Right? So in my experience, the greatest challenges that happen to women happen ever before they're in a workspace. Okay? And that is to do with our mental framing, our schematas, that our environment sort of builds within us, and then we go into the work environment. And so let me start by the first big one is to do with our self-worth, imposter syndrome. So women suffer from this way more than men.
Right.
So, and why does that happen? I think, Shana, you and I were talking about the education system, where we're not encouraged to ask why. We're not encouraged to challenge an opinion.
Yeah.
This is also more true of women, especially within the family structure. You don't ask questions. You do what you say. You're kind of raised in a very particular fashion.
Patriarchal, very, very patriarchal family.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're very milestone oriented.
Yes.
It's this whole thing of saying, I mean, we've all heard this. Oh, don't have a boyfriend, don't have anything until you're 18, but by 21 you should.
You gotta get married.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, I think that's it's a funny little piece, but it kind of demonstrates a point of being, okay, by this you do this, but right? So don't ask questions, this is how it should be.
Yeah.
So women face that a lot more. Some of my friends and I've discussed as well, there is this sort of this notion still that exists that you have to be the person that should know how to clean a house, cook in the household, and so on and so forth. So what we have seen, at least I have experienced, is, and I think this is a global phenomenon that I was talking with a friend of mine about recently as well, women have gotten greater access to education now than before. This is true of Sri Lanka as well. This is true. Oops. This is true of global dynamics. So what is happening is, previously, women were to be the nurturers, and housework were a part of that role. Child rearing was a part of that role. But the acquisition of goods was not a part of that role. Okay, but now what has happened is, inherently you're still nurturing, inherently. So the jobs attached to that still exist, but you are also educated.
Right.
You have seen the world, you want to achieve more. So that physicality of human existence, now you're capable of chasing after that as well. So now a third thing is happening in the background. What is happening is, obviously, healthcare has improved. And that means we're obviously living for longer. Quality of life is generally better, even though you can argue that our consumption of sugar and whatever has increased. But generally, our quality of life has improved. We are living for longer. And it also means, women are able to bear children at a later stage than just, being at an earlier stage in life, right? So all of these things are also happening. Now, why does that affect how we work? So number one is, now, at least in countries like ours, within a 24-hour period, you got to do all of these jobs.
Right.
You gotta now clean the house, take care of the children, and you are ambitious, so you gotta, fulfill those needs as well. Okay? That is becoming humanly impossible. We all saw this. I mean, we've read articles about this, but we've all been in those calls in 2020 where men are participating without interruption.
Right.
But women cannot participate without interruption. Right? What we mean by that is, you will hear a kid or whatever, and they want their mother, blah, blah, blah. So this became very difficult for women to manage more than for men. Again, these are broad terms. I'm sure there'll be a man that said, sure, broad terms, right? So the weight on the woman is far greater today. On top of that, you have women having been told no more, being told to be more reserved, where we anyway struggle to form an opinion and be confident in it. So the many no's that women have heard, and the many times that you've been told to be quiet and accept the milestones and the decisions that have been made on your behalf, are far greater. And then, now with all of these roles and responsibilities, your ability to present an argument, your point of view, being diminished, this is the kind of mentality through which we come into the workforce. Okay? So when we're talking about equality and the processes and the women in the boardroom, etc., you're generally talking about women who have been naturally trained for reserving their opinions or being apologetic about their opinions, being told to be softer and quieter, having to find their voice. within this boardroom. So this is famous, I think, researcher, and I believe I might have read it in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, right? So I believe that it required 3 women in a boardroom for a woman's voice to be heard.
Okay.
Okay? Now, again, why is that? So, is it because women find it easier to express their point of view when they're amongst women?
Right.
Or is it because a collective of male counterparts are more willing when they have that support? I don't remember, or I don't know. But clearly we understand there is power in numbers.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about herd mentality as
Yeah.
well just before the podcast started. So there is power in numbers.
Yeah.
But power in numbers also means that there's an inherent problem with being able to voice an opinion.
Right. Sure.
Okay? So
Is it because you get trapped into the herd mentality because you have to do that in order to be heard?
I think it's also because, again, like I said, it's also our how we be brought up,
Right.
you know. Again, to be more demure, to sort of accept certain viewpoints rather than challenge the viewpoint. It's the same old thing that we've seen on social media as well. If you challenge an opinion, a woman is more likely to be perceived as aggressive. And aggressive is perceived to be bad for a woman, but okay for a man.
Yep.
Okay, so this is not to say, again, that men are bad. I don't like that view. Because the people that have supported me, I have had an overwhelming support from my male counterparts and superiors that were men. Okay, so this is not a men are bad, we don't want
Absolutely.
men. But it's an inherent question of what does it mean when we're raising girls? What does it mean within our social structures? What does it mean not just about how we raise girls, but about how we view family? And how do we train boys and girls both to co-share? So is it a human capability to run a household, to co-parent? Is it a human requirement to be able to voice an opinion? So it's really about what it means to be human. So if you can, irrespective of gender or where you are in life, figure out what it means to be human, and you embed that within our social structures and our family values, I believe that is where we will have more holistic people coming into the workforce. Now, does that again exempt companies? Look, I believe that companies are trying because there are mandates that have been set. So,
Are you talking about like ESG mandates?
ESG mandates, and gender equality,
Sure.
all of that mandates, right? Because it's the same as with CSR, right? These are becoming mandates. Okay, so it's not like companies are not trying. Okay, but I think it's also about when we say mandates versus culture. Also about saying what is it that we need to give women that is a little bit different to men. Okay, how do we coach women? How do we coach men to create that kind of inclusive culture? So I think that's part of what the kind of challenges women face. The likelihood, and again, there's global research on this, men would climb up the ladder based on potential versus women
Right.
are only or more likely to climb up the ladder based on results, right? So potential versus results, right? So
Right.
so are these Sri Lankan challenges? No, these are not Sri Lankan challenges. These are global challenges. Does our culture play more of a role in exacerbating these things? Yes, right. So I think so. So I think the question therefore becomes: so what do we do? Are we saying that we should sort of do our culture, blah blah blah?
Yeah, so before we actually get into this kind of the solutions of this, because you have been recently coaching entrepreneurs, mainly women, so you have a lot of experience with that. Do you think, a little bit of a tough question, but do you think that in society women have to choose between career and children?
Is it a trade-off?
Is it a trade-off? Because some women don't, and they work and have children, but I believe the stats show women who do that are less likely to get promoted, less likely to have a career in that, because the child and family takes up time, and the men don't have those obstacles. So is it a trade-off?
And also, does it come down to kind of the values they inherently have as well? Okay, are you more family-oriented, or are you more, say, ambitious, and I don't really care about having a family? Does it come down to that as well, you think?
So I'm going to answer that in two parts. So number one, is it a trade-off? Yes, I think the stats show that. I think Indra is someone who has spoken a lot about this.
CEO of Pepsi?
Yeah, the former CEO of Pepsi. So I think she's given many interviews saying the idea of work-life balance it's a falsehood.
Right.
And that many times she's been able to succeed, especially when it comes to parenting, because she's had fantastic support system. Because she's had great PAs who've been able to answer her kids' calls or hunt down the cookies that she's been able to take for a bake sale. Or her husband was understanding.
Right.
Right? So I think, so is there a trade-off? Yes. But let me take that exact example of what Indra is saying, which is to say, I have an extensive support system. The problem is the trade-off is happening because women don't have a support system.
Right.
So, say for example, in the case of Indra, she had a great understanding husband. She had, now in our case, we have nuclear families, so she had a great PA, but we need the support of a village, right? So I think if the people around women with ambition, women, and you know what, it's not even ambition, women who have different things in their lives that fulfills them. Okay? It shouldn't just be ambition in a career, right?
Sure.
Let's say if you like art for the sake of liking art, you should be able to go and, paint.
Yep.
Right? So let's say you have different layers to you. You still need a support system that will enable life. We are social creatures and we need that. So if women have that, just like a man, you can achieve anything. Men have that. Men, the difference is you never really think of it as a support system.
True. Yeah.
You think of it as a wife.
Good thing we're not married.
But that is what it is. So your wife, and without you knowing, it's your mother-in-law. This is the support system. But we are calling it a support system because it's with a woman. But we've never thought about the fact that men need it too. So this is what, if you have that, your scales are equalized. So to me, some women are very fortunate that they get to have that. But most women don't. This is why when we're talking about education as well, I said it's not about how we educate our young girls. It's about our family values, how we educate boys, girls, everybody. how do we create a system that benefits us all?
Right.
And I want to pause there as well. Why? And we have to be very number-based on this. 51% of our population are women. We are a poorer country. We cannot have 51% of our population not participating
In the workforce,
productivity.
yeah.
That is just simple fact.
That's valid. For
If
sure.
you want to eat, you want to live better, we need 100% of our population participating in productivity, and that's just numbers.
I believe the stats say like 80% of women do not work in Sri Lanka, around 80%.
Yes, and Sri Lanka is the only country whose female participation in the workforce has declined over the last few years.
Oh, really?
Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I've been debating this, and again, I don't know why, but one of my theories is that during the financial crisis, more women went overseas, so the requirement for women to maybe stay back home and take care of kids and raise a
Makes
family
sense.
is
Certainly one big factor.
It could be, but yeah, I'm not really sure considering we keep touting these facts about how there are more women in the workforce. I mean, all the annual reports show that. So isn't it funny?
Although, do you think it's gender related or it has nothing to do with gender? Because everyone kind of got laid off during the crisis, kind of, had issues. I'm sure employment in general went down, but women obviously get disproportionately affected.
I think women were disproportionately affected because, again, the stats show that. And again, I'm assuming the financial crisis had a role to play in it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But my assumption is based on if someone had to take the lead in earnings in the family, it's almost always assumed that it's going to be the man. And perhaps, there might be a lot of data to support that as well. Again, I don't want to debate that. Maybe currently, a 40-year-old man is more educated and has more experience. So maybe that is why those choices are being made. So I'm not here to judge anyone.
Yeah.
But we do know that economic hardship globally affects women more.
More, sure.
And but I suppose my point of view here is that social reform is required so that economic reform can happen. And economic reform is the basis for all of us having our basic human rights intact. So this is not a men versus women thing. If you want to make it about a better Sri Lanka, make it about a British Sri Lanka. Make it about better Sri Lanka, not because women are better off, just because 21 million of us are going to be better off. Yeah. So to me, you want to have a better country. You want to drive productivity. You want to have a country that is resilient, but doesn't have to face that level of adversity ever again. Let's call it that. And we want to talk about diversity. Why do you want women in a boardroom, in entrepreneurial roles? Women have intuitive intelligence more than men do.
Absolutely.
So again, this is biology.
Yep.
Okay, so this is millions of years of evolution, right? So it's not to say again, I'm better than you or you're better than me. It means that we have complementary skill sets.
Right. We accept our differences. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking just again before this podcast. All the three of us come from different educational backgrounds. That's sitting here today, we're having a beautiful conversation because of our diversity. You're curious about me, and I was curious about you prior to this because of our differences. So our difference, we accept the fact that our difference makes us better.
Absolutely.
So we must have women in making our country a greater place. And to be honest, if we take our history, we've had queens, you know, and we've had this 2,000 years ago, so on and so forth. So it's just about getting back to our roots.
Very true. Very true. So you mentioned social reform comes before economic reform. So let's talk about like the solutions that you would kind of go about trying to fix these problems. So you're thinking about it more from let's fix our social, cultural, and get that to trickle down through education. That's your whole goal.
Well, I mean, I would say, when I say it's my goal, this is definitely my point of view. I think that would be a little bit of a hubris if I said it was my goal.
Okay.
I hope that my existence and in the way I interact with people and in the little work that I do, if I get to have that impact, I would be ever so grateful. But I just want to say, you know, it's definitely my belief. So yes, do I believe that education plays a role? Yes. But education then also becomes, you know, the foundation of education really happens at formative years. That literally means, do we have to wait for like another generation to pass us to have impact? I don't believe so.
Right.
I do believe there is a lot of work that both companies can do. Government is also doing some initiatives as well in inculcating entrepreneurship in women.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a very good start, because entrepreneurship means that you got to teach women to take risks, to think somewhat strategically, and you got to teach them financial literacy. And if women do well, their families do well. And the more examples of us seeing micro-entrepreneurship, and I'm not talking about building out big companies, micro-entrepreneurship, the more we see that, the more we normalize that, the more support we get. So to me, we have about 200 to 300,000 people in the private sector. This happening in 100 boardrooms is good, but if we have, assuming we have 10 million women, if we have 1 million women at the grassroots level driving this change, you know, to me, that would be sustainable impact.
Right.
Those women will teach their kids, hopefully better.
Right.
Yeah, because their quality of life will improve, therefore the education they give or they have access to for their kids will improve, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a two-pronged approach in my view. Entrepreneurship for women, and at the other end of the spectrum, it's about educational reform. And yeah, I think this is ultimately, in the long run, what will impact the way we change Sri Lanka. And let me pause there when I say the way we change Sri Lanka. I think we have become very bureaucratic in the way we drive productivity. Again, we have history of innovation, whether we talk about, you know, things like Parakana Bahu. We've had amazing engineering, we've had amazing architecture. So again, getting back to our roots is to say that we've got to get back to our creativity and innovative nature. And innovation cannot exist unless you're able to ask the questions why, to challenge norms, your ability to fail fast.
Yeah.
So otherwise you're able to teach children to both follow structure and to break structure, to recreate structure.
Right. Simultaneously.
Yes, we all need that in life.
Yeah.
In certain times we need to be disciplined, and certain times we need to be open to new
Rebellious.
experiences. We need both.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to have our education system reflect that.
Right.
But again, I think we were talking about this before as well. Our education system is about perfection.
Perfection. Yeah.
It's about forming a sentence as a response to whether it's a technical topic or even a creative topic.
Yeah.
So if your skill set is about putting words together in a perfect method, then you're never going to change or challenge a system. And as long as a system is not challenged, there's no room for new. Okay. So I think, so again, coming back to gender, or whether it's sort of Sri Lanka prospering, I think all of these things are interconnected. Like I said, primarily because of our demographics, requiring that women need to participate. We need innovative mindsets. We need to be able to challenge norms. We need to be able to challenge norms even in sort of our social structures. And we need to be able to challenge and be okay with failure.
Be okay with failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you start challenging these norms? Was that something you kind of always inherently had, or was it something you were nurtured to kind of become?
Oh gosh, no. I was never nurtured to challenge a norm. I think I was always given milestones.
Okay.
But I inherently despised structure.
Right.
Rebellious in nature.
I believe so. I think I had a constrained rebelliousness in me.
I think I saw an interview with you, or you wrote an article.
Okay.
And it was funny. I was chuckling to myself. You said, I'm a little crazy sometimes. I was like, oh, interesting. I want to ask Asha, how exactly are you a little crazy sometimes?
So I think, so I'll answer the first question and then I'll tell you why my
Please.
craziness
Yeah.
exists. And I love my crazy. I think I was always, in my head, I've always been rebellious. I've never, ever understood. I always wanted to know why a rule exists. If I can understand it, I will accept it.
Right.
But if I can't understand it, I will always feel at disharmony within myself,
I get it.
right? And I was like that in school.
Is that because you were living in your head?
I had to live in my head because my environment didn't encourage it.
Right.
So I always give this example. And again, I've had a lot of privileges in my life as well, right? So, and I don't know if I should say this. So I first went to school X, which had a lot of rules, which I never understood why those rules existed.
Right. In Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Right.
And
else?
then after my O-level, so if anyone's interested, they can go find out themselves. No, I'm not going to be the one to say.
Fair enough.
But then I went to school Y. And when I was at school X, I was very shy and very
Timid.
to myself. Yeah. And I did sports and everything, but I was very contained. Not by choice, like I said, because of environment.
Sure.
Then I went to school Y, and a person with my personality, which is sort of contained, shouldn't have done well. But that environment had less rules and a lot more openness to ask questions of why. And, much more of a testing environment. And I thrived,
Right.
right? And I've seen
Interesting.
that even in work environments, wherever there is so much of rules and I don't understand the rule, I cannot thrive. When you are telling me what to do, it's not like I can't do it.
Yeah.
But if I can't question it, if I can't add my own spin to it, I fail. I fail internally before I fail externally.
Right.
I'll give you an example. in a role, again, I won't specify the role. So I used to have monthly reviews with my boss. And I told my boss one day, I said, I don't think I'm doing well. And he said, why do you think you're not doing well? Like, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons why you're doing well. He said, and I said, oh, okay. Really surprised to hear that. And the reason I couldn't comprehend that I was doing well is because all I felt I was doing was following a system.
Right.
And inherently, I wasn't adding value.
Right.
And I wasn't adding value, meaning I could be replaced and there wouldn't be a difference.
It felt like a cog in a machine.
I felt like a cognitive machine and I didn't see my value.
Yeah.
It is not to say that a person wasn't adding value.
Yeah.
The job description wasn't being fulfilled. It meant that I couldn't see my worth
The
within
eternal,
that.
sure.
So somebody else was saying it.
Right.
But I could not, to this day, I cannot say that I added value. So to me, rules are, you should follow rules. I'm not saying, a world without rules would be chaos. But we need to understand why those rules exist.
Absolutely.
And we need to have a point of view. So that has been my leadership style as well. It's something that I've always told my teams. You're being paid for a point of view. You're not here to be silent. You're not here to not to my point of view. If you're nodding to my point of view, that scares me. That means I can make a mistake and I may not know it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be too late. You're paid for a view. And that's just how I operate. Sorry, so you asked me about crazy.
Yeah.
You asked me about crazy. Listen, I always joke, and my friends would attest to this, that I have 7 personalities that continue talking in my head, right? And sometimes that's very disruptive, even for me. But what it means is that I try to hold conflicting point of views in my head.
Right.
Okay? Because if I believe conflict is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? It means that I would agree with something with one part of my brain, and another part of my brain would be
It's
like,
questionable.
nah, that sounds kind of dumb, or that doesn't sit right. So what it naturally does for me is it sort of helps me to get into a more testing phase. It means that I might both dive in and then figure it out, while another part of me would help me to navigate that chaos. Okay, so you don't want to be so chaotic that you get a bad result and then you undermine your wellness.
Right.
But you also don't want to be so conservative that you never try.
Right.
Right? So I will always have an inner conflict. And to me, where my growth has happened is to say, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. To be able to live with your own contradictions is the greatest form of peace. That's my brand of crazy. And my brand of crazy is that, at least in my, when it comes to my work, I can find inspiration in anything. In anything. If I just need to have the problem in my head,
Right.
and I can let it be, and I can be watching TV. I can be watching Emily in Paris and find inspiration. Solve the problem. Right? So I think, and I can be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and this is how it's gonna be done. But cool. Let's pick up a phone and let's call this person. Okay, let's just now run. Let's run. And the thing is, with that it's good and bad. The good is you can do some crazy, brilliant stuff. But it can, if it's not also contained, it can exhaust a system. So I had one of my teammates always tell me, and he's like, Couch, you have a tendency to always run at 120 kilometers an hour. Sometimes I need you to run at 20 kilometers an hour. And I will tell you when I need you to run at 20 kilometers an hour. So whenever he would come and, because I was his boss, obviously, and he would be like, okay, this is the time that this one I need you to run at 20 kilometers an hour. So you need people when you can get so crazy to be also able to have that level of trust to be able to
Pull you back a
restrain
bit,
you.
yeah.
Exactly, pull you back as well. But my crazy is exactly why I'm sitting with you guys. My career hasn't been linear. My choices have not made sense to a lot of people. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense to me. But hey, I mean, one day when I'm, when I'm, going to my grave, I would have had quite a colorful life, and I'm good with that. So yeah.
That can't be very easy to have contradictions in your head where you got to constantly test your own thoughts out. But correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the best strategists, that's one of the key fundamental mindsets that they have to practice, to constantly question yourself. Was there a point where it was too much for you?
I think this year is the best example of it. Like you said, I was country director for Coke, first female, probably one of the youngest, first Sri Lankan to hold a post. And interestingly, I think coming into this year, I had been trying to convince myself that life was good. And so many times I told myself, look at the amount of abundance you have in your life, right? And Coke is a phenomenal company. You are given the best of the best. So it's a learning machine. And you're working with some phenomenal people, When I say phenomenal people, I'm not just talking about brains, but just generally good people, because there is a sense of collective good. Okay, so I know that the brand gets a lot of slack, but I'm talking as a former employee, and I'm telling you the company is phenomenal.
Right.
So it's a very difficult thing when you have abundance to be like, why am I so unhappy? Why doesn't this feel right for me? I'm in a particular way, I'm at the peak of my career. I've achieved things that a lot of other people haven't achieved. I have achieved things that even I didn't expect to achieve. So why doesn't this feel right? So for me, for a large part at the beginning of my year, was trying to reconcile one part of my brain that said, you look at the abundance. Look at all the things you have to be grateful for. And the other part is saying, yeah, but I just don't feel it. I just don't feel like it's aligned. I'm just not feeling happy. I can't even be happy if I meditate my way to this one. Okay? So was that one of the most exhausting things? Yes, 100%. It was also exhausting because, and this is where I think it gets very personal as well, I had a very traumatic upbringing, a lot of violence, instability, a lot of things that people don't associate with me. And the life that I live today is, I would call it almost the manifestation of a child who was 11 years old that was seated on a windowsill on a 31st night, crying, having been traumatized that night. And, there was no words called manifestation at that point, obviously. And then just this pure determination to say, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to somehow succeed. And that was just this simple vision of, and people who know me know the story, of me in a blazer, walking with a coffee mug into a boardroom and just commanding that boardroom. That's it. I didn't know what I was going to be. Let's see. Oh, no, none of those labels. I didn't have any of those labels. I just said, if I do this, and I am so independent, nobody's going to be able to touch me. Nobody's going to be able to hurt me. And I'm going to succeed. Mind you, I was a pretty, mediocre is putting, I would be saying a compliment to me. I was a kid who was getting like 40s to 60s at best. So there was no proof points. But what was happening this year is that I think I had done a lot of work on myself. That I didn't have to be that older child anymore.
Right.
That vision also was fulfilled, so it wasn't resonating anymore. So the ambition that fueled me to get to where I was, to, break the glass ceiling, it was enough. There was nothing more, there was no more fuel left in the jet.
In terms of healing.
In terms of that vision, there was nothing more to give there. So, from the outside world, one thing was to say, how can I feel so unthankful when I had everything? Everything, And then the other part of me is saying, no, this is just not right. So, yes, it's very, very, very difficult to hold contradictions. It is true with business choices as well as personal choices. But here's the thing that worked for me in my personal life, and this is what I do within a business environment as well. I didn't rush the choice. I said, okay, let me explore what all my options are.
Right.
Okay, so what do I want to do? If I could recreate life, what is it that I want? So I had one idea of going to Spain to do my MBA in entrepreneurship. Why do I want to choose Spain? Because I thought, no, I need to live. I haven't lived. I have accumulated a lot of wealth, generally speaking. But I haven't lived. I haven't traveled as much as my friends.
Right.
I haven't done anything crazy. I want to go to Spain, see history, architecture, meet people who don't even talk English.
Yep.
Okay? I'm going to go to Spain. I'm going to do an MBA in entrepreneurship. That was one thing on the table. Then I thought, okay, I also want to do this business. I want to create like a crazy brand. That's also something I want to do. Thing is, I did all of those things. I applied to the university. I got into the university. I started experimenting with the business. I started writing my own content. By the time I finally made the decision to leave Coke, I had failed in a few experiments. But I had enough thoughts coming together that I kind of knew I was going to be okay, and I knew kind of the direction. And I won't even say I know the direction I'm on right now. But there was enough patience to test out various options.
Right.
So that's why I said having 7 personalities and, the 7 giving at least 3 options to test out. While the other one held fort to keep me, mentally present and still perform, I think was very important because it made me make a choice, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, only time will tell, but I do believe it's for the best. But I think that's the prime example of being able to hold contradictions and find peace. And peace doesn't just happen. Peace happens through action. So, so that's to me how it kind of works in life.
Do you have a very unique story, Kaushali, in the sense that You were very ambitious from a very young age. That's kind of unique. What was different for you when you kind of got into the more upper echelon of the corporate life? Because it can't have been easy. We have female friends who have some horrific stories, you know. It's just bad. So, what made you? What were your tactics in the sense of dealing with sort of different personalities and men in particular?
Yeah.
I think there is an inherent viewpoint that I have succeeded. But I'm going to answer that question by saying I failed. Okay? The reason why I say I'm like a startup. I've just failed faster. So I've gotten one or two things right on in my journey as well. So I've been fortunate also in that some of the more horrific things that happen to women, I've been fortunate that those challenges I've not had to face. Okay, so call it my lucky stars. Here are the things that I have faced. So.
But just before you go into that, is that because of your personality, because you're more commanding, you've had that? Because generally my opinion, hypothesis, but girls who tend to be more subservient get into the trap of getting rolled over and steamrolled.
You can say it's my personality, but I have also seen women with tremendously resilient, strong personalities also being subjected to
Of course, there are
horrific
of course examples.
It is, and I wouldn't even say this is something I've done intentionally. Maybe I've always had a sixth sense of who the kind of people that I wouldn't maybe behave in a certain way. I don't know.
Right.
But I always say, and of course, this is not PG-13, but I always say that I have a certain something written on my forehead that makes men not try that kind of move in you. Obviously, you got the joke.
I get where you're going with
You
that.
clearly got the joke.
Yeah.
Look, so I think I wouldn't hate to say that I've done something intentionally,
Right.
because it also means that women should be X or should be Y, and therefore they can prevent it to 100%, and I don't think
Of course.
that. So I'm just going to say I've just been fortunate, right? I'm just going to say it as that.
Sure.
So does that mean there are, like, if I had a daughter, let me put it this way. If I had a daughter, what would I tell her? I would say, if you just trust your instincts. Trust your instincts with people. So your ability to listen to your instincts becomes very important. If you don't believe someone is good and you've only seen them in action in a business environment and you just don't think they're good, I would say make sure that your brain is always switched on with those people. And I'll tell you, and I don't think this is a very good example, but the second I came into significant leadership positions, I stopped drinking in most social situations to do with the corporate environment. Okay, these are only things that women have to do, or that was my choice. Because number one, I didn't want to be perceived in a certain way, and I wanted to make sure I was always in control of my narrative. And I was not going to be vulnerable more than I had to be.
Right.
And that was very, very important for me.
Right.
And that, again, is giving you some flavor of probably things I did very subconsciously as well, to ensure that I have some level of control.
Right.
But here's the thing. Now, I think I'm a very good example of someone who has gone to the top as a result of a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice.
Yes.
And I think the sacrifice is not very evident sometimes to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I have the accolades to show for it. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm very fortunate that I'm in a podcast with two
Difficult
talented young
guys.
men. Difficult but smart young men. And I'll give you an example, right? So obviously I've risen to the top, and I admit I've had amazing men and women, but amazing men support me in that journey. And also maybe because of the generation that I belong to, I've had more male bosses than I've had female.
Right.
Okay? Now I'm sure the current generation and the generations afterwards will have more female leaders.
Yeah.
It just happened to be the case that I've had more male bosses. And clearly, I must have done something right, and they must have been supportive of the work that I'm doing, that I got to where I'm at. Here's also the truth that runs in parallel. If you take the body of work that I've done since I was an assistant brand manager, and then I've gone into, like, we spoke about, whether it was at Atlas, especially because when I was at Atlas, which is a Hemas subsidiary, is when I came into my first leadership roles. Meaning, and especially when you're in a local company, there is no multinational to rely on for your thinking. It is you. It is your thinking. Here's what was possible during my leadership. We came out of a crisis. Our market share tanked. I was able to get that brand into some of the highest market shares ever. We won more accolades during my period than the brand had won before.
You had expanded the business into Africa, I believe. And,
That I can't take credit for,
Right.
because that is actually the team that is running the business today. But I was involved in some of the preliminary work. But I was able to transform the shares, the revenue, the kind of markets, and we spoke about brand purpose, and so on. I was able to take the brand into, the EdTech and MarTech territory. I'm very, very proud of what we were able to achieve. But it's sad to say that my success has been attributed to nefarious activities, if I so put it that way.
Could you elaborate on that?
I think it wouldn't be PG-13 if
No,
I
we
was
get what you're
doing
saying.
that.
Yeah.
So it becomes this again. We go back to potential versus achievement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So even when the evidence is very, very clear about what you're capable of doing and your the victories that you enable people to have, it becomes, because people cannot reconcile. Sometimes age, maybe it's gender, maybe it's your perception about
Right.
what that person's history is, because you can't reconcile that. The easier answer becomes something else.
Right.
So I think, I think women face that kind of bias in the workplace. And I think that is the kind of stigma that I have faced. Number two,
Right.
and I would admit to this because this is a part of my story. It's a part of my undoing, and it's a part of my success. I am hungry for results. The reason I have been successful is because I am hungry for results. I am unapologetic about results. Okay? If you have a male counterpart who was as hungry for results as me, he'll even succeed more than me. But I am hungry for results. I am extremely creative, and I can see through an idea.
Right.
And I'm willing to take a risk. So what that means is I'm very, very demanding. Very demanding of people. Okay? It makes me, either you love me or you hate me.
Right.
You're never going to be
In the middle.
It's just how it is. So, and the people who've loved me are people that I continue to love and nurture even outside of work.
Right.
And it's not because they love me.
Right.
I love them.
Right.
And I love people in a way to say, you don't have to be the best, but you got to have grit.
Right.
You got to want it for yourself. If
Right.
I see hunger in your eyes, I will champion for you.
Right.
Fair.
So, but if you're going to come in and
Half-ass it.
you're just, and if you don't have the willingness, you're going to hate me because I'm going to keep demanding, not because there's something personal, because I believe that there's something great to achieve
Right.
together.
Interesting.
So you can imagine being a woman, being at a particular age, being unmarried. Oh wow, those things create a beautiful comic book story. So I think, again, those are challenges that women face more, to have the narrative that is written about you becoming a lot more delusional than real. And it's very difficult to retain your sense of femininity and your sense of self-worth, while also wanting the same things as perhaps your male counterparts.
How did you deal with that though? Did you have to desensitize yourself to those kind of comments? Like, how would young women deal with that?
To be honest with you, you shouldn't be desensitized. It should offend you.
Right.
It should offend you because it is offensive.
It is, yeah.
Okay? The second, the last thing I want to tell a woman watching this is to accept that it is okay. It is not okay. It is not okay. The more we accept that it is okay,
The more normalized.
we allow for the same thing that has happened to women before us to happen again.
Nothing changes.
Absolutely.
Yes, nothing changes. See, for example, you have me on this podcast, and again, I trust that you have me on this podcast also because of what I've achieved.
Of course.
And this is my forum to tell women that this does happen and it's not okay. And this is my platform to say that we should do better. We cannot accept that our potential is not recognized. Our achievements are not our achievements. Now, let's say I wanted to be scandalous and promiscuous and still achieve. Okay. Go read the newspaper. So many men are promiscuous and they are achieving stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and they continue to achieve. So I'm not here to tell you to live by a moral code either.
Yeah.
You want to be promiscuous? You be promiscuous. Because you are hired to achieve. You are hired to deliver. The only place where I would say I would have a moral code is I don't want to hurt anyone along with my way of living. I don't want to ever intentionally hurt anyone.
Right.
Okay, so that's where I draw my moral, my boundary. But what I'm trying to say is holding women to some greater standard than our counterparts, I think is the biggest challenge that we face. We have to be Mother Mary, but we also need to achieve like Elon Musk. So it's a challenge. And
Have you seen that it's, I don't know, this might not be true, but has it gotten any better from, say, the first time you entered the workforce And now, has it gotten any better, worse? Well, changed at all?
The thing is, I believe that if you, I haven't unfortunately been in leadership enough to see an evolution. I think women in leadership unfortunately face that kind of stigma more, because by the time you get into leadership, you are posing a challenge more than if you were one of many. So at least I didn't face that as much when I was at one of many. But I start posing a challenge when I'm one of 5. So I've like I said, I've been a part of like leadership teams for 5 years, which is not a long time. And I think my experience has been shocking to me that it's both been shocking and, again, like I said, it's a contradiction, right? Your first reaction is, wow, that exists. People think that way, and like, but look at the rational database way of looking at this, and then also being like, yeah, well, okay, this makes sense also that people do still think that way. So I haven't had the fortune or misfortune to see that whether there has been a difference. But my hope is that with more women in positions such as mine that can influence minds, I think we have a great opportunity, not just about talking about female participation. We should be challenging the social context within which we operate. And some of these are not only true for women, it is also true for men. Some of them, right? Now, for example, Trevor Noah recently gave this interview. And he says, being unmarried, sorry, I'm just, this also has a bias that people face. Being unmarried somehow made him half a person. Okay, like people perceive you as a half person.
Right.
If you are divorced, you're still a full person. But if you have never chosen to be married, for whatever reason, you're somehow half a person. I highly encourage everyone to watch that clip from Trevor Noah, because he expressed something that I've always felt that I've never been able to articulate. And that's true. Because I was not only a female, challenging gender norms in some ways and challenging perceptions about what a female leader should look like, how a female leader should sound like. But I also had the fortune and the misfortune of being unmarried. So what it essentially implied to some is that, oh, I'm uncaring.
Right, that you're cold.
I'm cold. I don't somehow share their value systems. Right. You don't know my personal story, but somehow these became validating to their perception.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, self-fulfilling would mean that I accept that.
Yeah.
I never accepted
right.
that. I never accepted that. I accepted my humanity. I accepted that, like I said, both contradictions can exist.
Once, sure.
That I can have absolute goodness in the way that I would fight for the people that I love. And I would want the best for the people I believe in.
When high-functioning men do that, they're, looked up to.
Exactly. And I shouldn't be apologetic about wanting more. And I shouldn't have had to make personal choices. Like you said, it's a funny story, isn't it? Women, if you're married and you have a child, you can't participate fully if you don't have a supportive, network of people around you.
Yep.
But somehow, being a single woman that is ruthless or whatever, or highly aggressive or ambitious or whatever word people want to attach, somehow also makes you unqualified.
Right.
You know, so so you really can't win. So I at some point accepted that this is what it is, and that my pursuit has to be an environment where I can pursue my creativity, my humanity, my need for connection in an environment of my making. And I guess this is 3 months into that choice.
You want to design your own life and system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's also about a sense of safety. Sort of taking control of my narrative, as well as saying, there's a system that is designed that is not for me. Now, so I would rather devise a system for my own self-fulfillment, for my own sense of peace, and ultimately, I always think about, this is pretty morbid, I always think about the day I'm dying. What is that last thought I want to have? Because I always believe your last thought before you go to sleep is, it's a very solitary thought. And I assume that the last thought you have before you die is also a very solitary thought. And I always think about, okay, when that day comes, what is that feeling I want to have? And if I feel safe that I have done the right thing by me as a human being, and it's not always about what society perceives or what somebody else perceives, but have I done right by myself? My life journey, for me to feel a sense of wholeness, that's the only obligation I have. And I feel the choices that I have made so far is getting closer to that reality.
Okay, but you don't have do you know what the end destination would have to be for you to feel that way?
No. I will tell you very simply, even my 2026 goal is to say, I have no idea what I'm going to end up achieving, but what I'm going to do is create a system of discipline and sort of an everyday discipline in ensuring that my life has variety and I am every single day investing in myself. That's all I'm trying to achieve in 2026. And I'll tell you why that's important for me. Because I am very clear for the first time in my life, I don't know what the destination is, and I'm comfortable with that. And I also, for this right now period, I'm happy with not setting absolute goals.
Right.
Because this is my phase of creation. If I don't allow creation to exist as creation, and I put in too much structure now, I'm going to fail.
Right.
So what I can do is I can be mindful and present every single day. But I need to make sure that I use my time productively. So if I say Mondays are about this and this is how I structure my day, and Wednesdays are about creative pursuits, I go for dancing class or an art class, and I pursue imperfection. I trust that at some point it will materialize into a goal that I can connect with.
Yes.
But 2026 is not that year. So I do believe that I will never know. I will never know who that. I always laugh at a friend of mine that I'm going to conk off at 80. And I believe that God will keep me around also till that time, even though I'm happy to go anytime. But I definitely don't want to live till 100. So one day, 80-year-old Kaush is going to be a very different version to the couch today, and that person is not a person that I can predict for right now. So I never imagined as a young child, again, like I said, when I was 11 or so, that I would have quit my very, very nice job at 39 years. So why would I assume that I would know what, life holds for me at 41 years?
Right.
Right? So I will keep it.
How much of you were raised by a single father? I'm sure that had a big role to play in how your mindsets have been built. What was that like?
So my relationship with my dad is complicated at best. So the credit of my dad, my father, I think it's important to tell my father's story before I explain how important he was in the human being that I am today. So my dad comes from a farming family from Kisamaharama. And his dad died when he was 10 years old. He was raised by his sister who had moved to Colombo. And my father was fortunate to get a scholarship into Royal College and then went on to Coca-Cola to get an engineering degree. And fortune also had it that in the early 2000s, I think, he was appointed as a regional manager for a Fortune 500 company, and so he was in charge of this region. So his journey ultimately enabled me to kind of get access to the education that I received. But his beginnings are very humble. So to me, a person who's made a steep climb in life as well is my father, and as a result of his steep climb, I was able to do a steep climb. But my father, has he given me everything? Has being a single dad, especially a single dad in a country like ours, is very difficult. There were parties I could never throw because moms were not comfortable sending their kids to a household that is run by a man.
Right.
My father never, I think, also felt fully capable of running both a household, raising a daughter by himself.
You were an only child?
I was an only child. So what that meant was, I think there was a severe need for him to be attached as well. So having said that, my father did do an incredible job in providing for me. He was also, in his own way, broken. His own way, I think there was, emotional violence as well as physical violence in the household. And the way I think about my life is to say that if my formative years, or not just my formative years, even into my early 30s, that the adversities that I faced, and adversities I faced in silence, actually. Most of my family didn't know a lot of these adversities. My best friends didn't know the kind of adversities. They really shaped who I am today, and I'm very happy with the person I am today. When I say I'm happy with the human being I am today, does that mean I'm happy all the time? No. It just means that...
You're content?
Not on most days. But it means that I'm, as a human being, in terms of my values, I'm very proud of my values. I'm very happy about how I hold up to my values. I am happy about how resilient I am. I am happy about my love language. I am happy about the humanity I can demonstrate. Okay? But that's why I said happiness doesn't always sort of go hand in hand. Okay? So most of the time, if you have to be resilient, happiness is,
Sure.
kind of up in there some days, right? So I am grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the sacrifices my father made. I'm regretful for maybe the trauma he himself went through and the results it had on my life. But I'm grateful for everything that took place in my life. And I'm grateful, whether it was God or myself, for the choices I've made. Because my life could have gone very differently. But somehow here I am. Okay? So what I'm trying to say also is that life is, I think there's a tendency, that whole thing about judging a book by its cover. Most of the time, the challenge I've had is also to be vulnerable. Even in my corporate life, I found vulnerability to be very, very challenging. When vulnerability is a challenging thing to demonstrate, people will be more likely to judge you by your cover.
Yeah.
You can't blame them as well, because you are only presenting the cover. And then when people are judging you by your cover, there's a sense of sadness that you will also have. So that internal conflict is something you have to manage. But the consequences of that is that the inner turmoil of people judgment and your judgment of yourself sometimes kind of there's an overlap.
Yeah.
And the amount of work that you need to put in is a lot. And but if you can look back and be grateful for your journey, irrespective of the circumstances you faced, I think that's the only way to navigate yourself into walls of life.
It's very easy to break down. Yeah. If you go through a lot of adversity, you can either go down the path you went down, or you can just completely break down and get crippled, which is what happens to most.
I guess that's where the grit part comes into play, I assume.
Sorry?
That's where grit comes into play, I assume.
Grit?
Grit?
Grit, yes.
Yeah.
Well, one is I've broken down more times. I've, had my bouts with depression. I've had my share of thoughts of suicide, and I say that sort of without any shame to it, because I believe if I have faced it, there are other people that are facing it too. There's no shame in it. So I've broken down more times than I care to admit. But I think the question you're asking is also, when it comes to grit, really what on earth is grit if I've also broken down so badly? And if I have really contemplated whether life was worth living or not, what on earth is grit?
Right.
To me, what grit is that final moment, if you can tell yourself, if you can come up with one solution, and be willing to try that solution also before you give up. That is grit. In my personal experience, again, I'll take 2025 as a very good example of it. I think because a lot of people didn't see 2025, latter part of 2024, that I was going through severe depression. Meaning it would be, I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh my God, I hate my life. I hate my life.
Yeah.
But then I would say, okay, all I have to do is get through the next 5 minutes. all I have to do is get into that washroom and brush my teeth. That is all I have to achieve in life right now. Okay? And so you get through, you go and brush your teeth. And then you give yourself the shot at the next 5 minutes, and the next 5 minutes, and the next 5 minutes. To me, in that moment, to not succumb to that level of sadness and grief, despair, was literally telling myself, here's the goal I'm giving myself. I'm not going to go out there and achieve the highest number of sales. I'm not da-da-da. This is the expectation. I'm not going to do any of that. I am just going to brush my teeth. That's it.
Were you experiencing that kind of, were you experiencing that throughout your career, or was it more towards the latter part of it?
First of all, I've dealt with depression for a large part of my life.
Right.
But why I'm giving the example of 2025 is because that was, I call 2025 the year of my undoing. The year where a lot of people seem to think it was just about stepping out of my career. It was not. It is, like I said, it was about undoing my childhood trauma. It was about saying an 11-year-old had this vision. An 11-year-old had a view of what hyper-independence looked like. I have to step away from all of that. So depression to me this year was to say, my life, my identity, that I have put in this much effort and I have sacrificed everything for, doesn't resonate. So that is why I'm taking the example of 2025.
Right, got it.
But I've had severe depression. I have had my challenges with suicidal thoughts and whatnot since I was my early 20s, and actually when I turned 30, I read this book called I Am Enough by Larissa Pierce, and that is the first time I trained my brain outside of everyday depression.
Got it.
Right? And then in the last few years, and that's what came to save me in 2025 as well, because I knew that it was never an option for me to say I'm ending life. Okay? So to me, that is how severe depression has been, but it was never an option to give up anymore. Why was it never an option? Because I call it, just like you talk about Catholic guilt, I have karmic guilt. I am severe karmic guilt. So that was one part of it. But out of jokes, it was also to say I've experienced suicidal thoughts before, and that's never the solution. Life will always turn. Life will always turn. I just need to get through the next 5 minutes. My thing is, if I can survive the next 5 minutes, I can get through the next 20 years, next 50 years, whatever it is. I just need to get through the next 5. So if you can navigate, our brains are not, especially when you feel overwhelmed, we are not in a position to start planning. Like you cannot be like, okay, but when my father's relationship and when or maybe if the sale goes up tomorrow, then no. Our brains are very simple. We are simple creatures. We need to find hope. Our ability to find hope is if we can land a plane. We need to give ourselves simple enough goals that we can meet. It reinforces our ability to believe that we can.
Is it have momentum? To get momentum?
Yes, it is to create belief.
To survive.
Yes, to survive. If you have belief, you can get far. So, like I said, brushing my teeth and living 5 minutes would create enough belief that I can get up from
And do the next thing. And then the next thing.
The next thing. So all I needed to do was I needed to tell myself to get into the washroom. And then the next one. And the next one. So my brain starts believing that it can. I am a big believer in biology. Okay, so I mean, I believe this whole notion of, you live only once, so we have our brains. I always say this, our brains are not hardwired to keep us happy. Our brains are hardwired to keep us safe because
Right,
our
yeah.
job is to live to reproduce.
Yeah.
So what we need, if we understand that, then we just need to be able to train and program our brains. So for me, grit doesn't lie in the big things. Grit lies in the smallest objects.
But how do you deal with it? I mean, when you're in a leadership position, especially, that's great. I mean, you take it one step at a time. I do that too. I completely get what you're saying. But then when you get into a position where you have to make very strategic decisions on behalf of other people, on behalf of your company, whatever it is, how does that work then? Because it's a significant disadvantage, right? To have, I mean, getting through each and everything slowly, but then when you get into the workplace, what do you do? Do you kind of shift your mindset entirely then, or how do you deal with that?
Again, this is being my personal experience because I'm guided by my values.
Yeah.
I've always found being able to do something creative or do something for the greater good as being a sense of relief. So I have been able to use work as the greatest distraction from my personal life. So, for instance, the question you're asking, again, this would not be relevant for everybody. So when I can go to work, we spoke about again, social impact, and I'm able to do something for another person, it enables me to believe in my own goodness and my need to survive. When I get into the workplace and I'm able to achieve something, whether it's for the benefit of somebody else or for my own benefit, it enables me to believe that I can. So I have always, unfortunately, sought refuge in my work. And that has been personal to me. Now, so it's again how you can channel grief.
That's
The
true.
greatest artists have been able to channel grief.
That's true.
And unless you are able to channel, if you're unable to feel grief, you cannot also feel joy.
Yeah.
So the thing is, all of us are going to feel grief. We just need to be able to figure out our own style
Of channeling it.
And the challenge for me now has become, now that I'm sort of on my own journey and I don't have this
Shareholders.
machine
Yeah, sure.
to channel it into. Some days I find it challenging that I have to sit with my personal life. And I am learning that skill now. So that's why I said I don't know what the 80-year-old who she will be. I've found it more challenging to not have a place to channel it than having someone demand something of me and then having to rock up for another person or something of a greater benefit.
So ultimately, I mean, I guess what you're saying is that people who do deal with these kind of depressive episodes, they do need something of greater good that they can kind of work towards.
A greater purpose.
A greater purpose. That seems to be, I mean, from what you've said, that seems to be the ideal way to get through it, right? Not necessarily in work, but with anything. Maybe, I mean, it can be anything, right? So ultimately, I assume that's what you're trying to say as well.
I think I'm saying two things. One is, I think one is to say, figure out what a small win is going to be. A small win. The smallest of wins. And figure out how those small wins can be many small wins within the day. For me, it was simply, like I said, brushing my teeth, wearing my clothes, getting to work. Small wins, right? And the second thing is, the challenge here, though, I'm going to say one thing before I say what I believe. If you have a severe level of depression, you might have also not found a place to channel your your purpose and your emotions. So that might be a challenge in itself. But if you are able to hold space for something you truly love doing, right? Because love is the antidote for depression, for sadness, really. So
That's interesting.
It's not about finding a person. It's finding something that is you love. Because if you can channel it into something you love, you're actually loving yourself. So, but I also acknowledge that sometimes some people have not found that yet, and that's quite sad. So I empathize with.
So how do you find it?
How do I find it?
And how would you say someone else can find it?
I am a naturally very curious person. I am naturally okay with trying anything and everything. And the bad part about that is I will try something for like all of 5 minutes. So there are a lot of things that I have not finished. Right? So if you looked at my Audible now, I have more books that I have completed at 30 to 50% than anything that I have completed. So naturally, what it means is I try a lot of things. Okay, so even if I was to get out of feeling sad, I'm completely okay with trying something new. Okay, so there have been 2 points in my life where I felt like, oh my God, if I stick with this job, my soul is going to die. And whenever I speak of my soul, I speak of it in terms of my creativity. Okay, that personality that needs to try to do. Whenever I've felt that way, I've always started a writing project. I once wrote a blog. Then I started this Instagram page, right? So I like to channel it into words and creating something or learning something. Because whenever I'm doing that and I'm trying, my brain is like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. So I just
Right.
The thing is, if you understand what your soul needs, and if you're able, like I said, for me, it's creativity. You're able to give that medicine to yourself. So again, how do you see yourself? If you can have a relationship with yourself that you're like, what do you need? What do you need right now? Okay? And if you're able to, in a very childlike way, answer that, that's your medicine.
That's, yeah,
Interesting.
I love that.
So I've been, again, I always come from a place of, I have a lot of blessings in my life. Okay? So maybe a blessing that I do have in my life is whether I've been able to articulate it very clearly or not, through and through and through in my life, I have been blessed enough to know how to somehow give myself that medicine. In the 39th year of my life, I'm able to articulate it a little bit better. So imagine where I'll get to by the time.
We'll have a podcast in 5 years.
I'm done.
Perfect.
So in your one-on-one coaching stuff, is this something you kind of get into as well, or is it mainly career focused?
No, actually, I get into the parts of dealing with your identity
Right.
before getting into
Nice.
any hard skills.
Okay.
Because my belief is leadership journey is very, very, it's an individual experience. How you relate to people is so personal, right? So there is no book you can read and a general coaching you can do, and then somehow you figured it. You got to be able to deal with your anxiety. You got to be able to even take your anxiety and be able to channel it. So first phase of the kind of coaching that I do is to really sit with a person and to understand them. Understand even their aspirations. And, I always had this pre-discovery questionnaire. And it has different, different things. It asks you about, tell me about like one of the highlights of your career. Tell me if, in a perfect world, if your education was wiped out, everything was wiped out, what would you do? So I have a range of questions. But really, when I read the answers, I am not reading the answers. I am reading, did you elaborate? Or did you restrain yourself?
Right.
What was your language? Is there any contradictions in what you're saying? So say, for example, you're saying, my intention, my mission to come to you is because I want to, say, scale my business. But at the end of it, if you're telling me, in an ideal world, I'd rather be chilling on a beach. Okay, now I'm looking at that contradiction. Say, for example, I've sent out that questionnaire, and you've only written 1 or 2 sentences, or you skipped a question. I'm paying attention to the question that you skipped. If you have written like 2-3 lines, it's either telling me that you didn't really pay attention to the questionnaire. So are you really willing to put in that time and effort into this coaching? Or are you the kind of person that doesn't really want to share? So which is it? So when I get into my first session, and I don't even call it a first session, it's my discovery session, because you need to see if you want to work with me, and I'm going to see if I want to work with you. So I am now testing for that. So for me, the first part of what I do with my clients is to really, really understand them. And supporting them to understand themselves, to articulate who they are and what they want. You would be surprised at how many people can't articulate what their goal is, even in working with me. But they're still choosing to come to a coaching session. So, just to answer your question, it is to first say, let's get real about what you want, who you are and what you want. And then let's start talking about what you want to achieve.
Well, that's the biggest hurdle, isn't it? Most people don't know what they want.
Absolutely.
You'd have to dig into your life, reflect.
100%. See, for instance, I do this exercise called the leadership canvas. And the leadership canvas is really looking at EQ, IQ, resilience, as well as balance. Okay? And the first thing I say is, find me people you idolize in these 4 segments. And short and sweet, I tell them, tell me why you idolize these people in these segments. And you cannot have an overlap.
Interesting.
Okay. The reason I do that is because I also want people to be able to articulate, to say, hey, the main thing I want people to see in me is IQ or EQ. Or you know what? I want to have personal balance. I want to have harmony in my life. What is it? And if you can look at me and say, this is the quality I want to emulate. Okay, so what does that mean for you? That is more meaningful than saying, I am idolizing this one person. So, for example, I always take the example of Churchill. We know that Winston Churchill was a great leader, was monumental in the strategizing for World War II. Right? But he was quite a terrible person. Quite a terrible person. So even if you look at countries that were colonized like ours, there's nothing that we should be admiring about him.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think he caused the famine in Bengal. I think he calling them animals, so there's a different side to it.
Absolutely. Right. But then when it came to wartime, he was instrumental in forming forth, in Great Britain, and ultimately steering the world away from the whole chaos that unfolded, right? So there might be multiple views on World War II also nowadays, but hey, leave it at that. So, but then your ability to articulate, this is the thing about Winston Churchill, was his ability to find innovative solutions. Okay, that is what I admire about.
Right.
But I really like Indra for this thing. So if you're able to say, look, when I choose the kind of leadership style, this thing, these are the kind of traits, these are the kind of characteristics that I want to be able to have. That to me is very holistic. And also, leadership is about choices. You do not get to have at 100% IQ, EQ, personal balance, and everything at 100. You got to make choices. Your ability to be a harmonious and, a balanced leader may be at times in contradiction with your ability to be high IQ.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And why I say that is because if you are very high IQ, you might want to drive radical change. So if you are going to drive radical change is difficult for collective of people.
Yep.
So you've got to be okay with that trade-off. So my thing is, unless you don't think you are, leading and what you want, what the impact you want to leave behind, what is the kind of person you want to be in the future, you're not able to really sort of say, this is the kind of leader that I want to be. And then once you're talking about idols, sometimes we talk about idols in terms of stories rather than understanding the behavior and the traits.
Sure.
Because the behavior and the traits are what make those stories.
Yep.
So we are idolizing the story, not the person. So this is where I want to inject realism. This is where the merging happens for me.
Very interesting. So I want to reverse that back on you. Could you name 4 people you idolize in the 4 boxes that you mentioned, and why?
Yep. So for me, honestly, when it comes to balance, I think of Indra. So that's hence why I'm talking about this. When it comes to resilience, I think of Martin Luther King.
Okay.
And when it comes to IQ, I think of actually Churchill.
Really? Okay.
I do.
Nice.
And when it comes to EQ, it's a mix between Simon Sinek and Brené Brown.
Silence in. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So to me, I think that Churchill was crafty and very creative, out-of-the-box thinker. And that's the kind of thing I want to be able to drive even in the businesses that I run. Okay, I want to challenge them. In the new me, when it comes to personal balance, again, similar to what I was discussing with you, doesn't have a misconception that personal balance is difficult. There is realism about the fact that you're always juggling. And at some points, that one thing will take priority over another thing. So there is every moment in life, you cannot have equal importance in everything.
Right.
And nothing remains the most important thing forever.
Right.
I like that.
Interesting.
When it comes to Martin Luther King, imagine your ability to challenge the norm, gain the collective confidence, and then also be inspiring. And at the same time, also knowing that what you're doing is also putting your family at risk, but still being able to be dedicated to your cause. So resilience to me is to be able to take accountability for all that you're putting on the line and still giving people a sense of safety and confidence to fight for what's right. Simon Sinek and Brené Brown, why they compete on this. Simon Sinek speaks about the why.
The why.
Brené Brown speaks about vulnerability. So being able to articulate your reason for doing something and then being open and honest about that, which is very difficult, is how I want to start living. And I say I want to start living because it's very difficult for me. A person who has had that level of hyper independence,
Yeah.
will always, I will always know the why of something.
Yeah.
But being open and honest about it is where I struggle.
Sure.
So I never want to veer away from understanding the why, which is why, we were talking about being a rebel. I will always personally need to know why I'm doing something.
Totally understand.
But I am trying my level best to trust somebody else with my truth.
Okay.
So those are my people.
That's super interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I mean, I think we can come to a close. But before we come to a close, maybe you can tell the audience about how they can get in touch with you for coaching, for anything else you want to mention.
Sure.
Go for it.
So I'm very open on LinkedIn. And I pretty much try and respond to any message that I get on LinkedIn more often than not. At least a good 90% of the time I do respond if you send me a message on LinkedIn. I also do have my coaching Instagram, which I'm her. Some days I'm very active, but nonetheless, if you message me on, it's called Couch of Soul.
Nice.
And
They put a link below.
so if you ever follow me and message me on Couch of Soul, I will 100% reply to you. So yeah, I'm even, I think, when I joined Coke, and there was a lot of media around that, one thing I always told myself is that this opportunity in life is a blessing, and if people reach out, I have to have the humility to be able to respond to people. And because nothing in life, no blessing in life is also guaranteed and is ever present. So why I'm saying this now is to say that if you get in touch with me and if there's something I can do for you, I will always try to sort of communicate with you with that level of humility.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Interesting.
All right. Thank you so much for the conversation. It's been awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Kaushali.
very much.